THC in his system. Stick out your arm, pal. I'll pay for your blood work because I'm a conscientious doctor. I'm going to go to your company and tell them, hey, there's no way this guy was impaired on the random, the post-accident, the reasonable suspicion drug screen if he has zero active THC. Companies are adopting it because they know they're going to have to be okay with the lifestyle, but not impairment.
How fast are companies adopting it?
They're kind of slow. A few of the locally owned companies in control, they make the decisions. They can hear me in the boardroom and making the decisions. Say, for instance, I don't want to say any steel companies that are they're in Colorado and Washington State and based in Springfield, but they are looking at it. Smaller companies like roofing companies and construction companies are adopting it wholeheartedly because they understand. Blanket wide, say we're going to do drug screening today, they're going to lose about a fourth or a fifth of the workplace. It's really good workers.
How are insurance companies dealing with this as it causes them? This could cause them to cover people that they wouldn't have had to cover before.
Well, we need to get to the legislature and let them know that it's wholly inappropriate for the state workers' comp system to make a worker pay for a third of his injury if he falls off a roof and he had THC, active THC in his system for 3 weeks ago. You know, we have a lot of education that we need to do. I'm sure employers in this Republican-controlled state and legislature would be very slow to change the fact that they can deny a workers' comp case 30% just because they had something in their system for 3 weeks. That's not going to change probably in this conservative state of Mobley.
Is this a chemical test that you use? Or you said blood work, is it
It's blood work, and yes, it would have to be sent through a special mass spec machine with what's called derivatization to make sure that the inactive stuff is not being converted by the heat to the gas chromatography, but it's a very specified test. My charge, they charged me $130. The hospitals charge me about $400 for this test, and if, you know, I'm basically occasionally doing them for free if they can to help cover me the basic costs. I feel it's my responsibility.
Thank you.
Back there.
Mike, you may have just answered the question I had. It goes along with protecting workers' rights that are prescribed, or a person that is prescribed or is involved in recreational use off the job, and a guy comes into work, maybe, and, you know, smokes up the night before 8 or whatever, comes in the next day, he's sober, but his THC levels are still high. Okay, how do you protect those workers?
The worker's nailed because he's probably got a policy that he signed when he came on duty saying that, you know, I will abide to having no drug or metabolite in my system ever. Okay. Other than that, if they have an authorization, you know, the doctor may want to go to bat. I saved a guy with the gutter company. You know, they didn't like the fact that he was on marijuana on a random, but I sent him a letter. I made him a pill. I said the guy eats it. He uses it only at night. There's no impairment. But you know what? The basic rule of thumb is that somebody that just smokes once a day, the level's going to go sky high for a few minutes and come down and then level off. By the next morning, you know, if you're a 420 baker, the next morning it's going to be, your active's probably going to be zero. But if you're smoking twice a day for 3 consecutive days in a week's time, and then every day at least once, your level's going to hover around 3 to 4, maybe up to 5 if you're more than twice a day, and you'll never be able to drive legally in the state. So, you know, there are levels. I've had patients come in after 12 hours of abstinence and their levels have fallen below 10. But of course, they're heavy users and they medicate. And again, there's a lot of neuroadaptation and there is no impairment. It's a dilemma. We've got lots of educating to do, but most likely the answer to you is changing the employer policy or at least getting an advocate to go to them saying, hey, look, this guy's level's always this, there's no impairment, and a personal approach is what I suggest.
I just want to add one thing really quick to that. Jacqueline alluded earlier to the problem in California with the ADA not covering her even as a California medical marijuana patient. So this issue about workers testing positive has been litigated in California. It was the Ross v. Raging Wire case. In Washington State, it was Roe v. Teletech. The Walmart case, Cassius v. Walmart, maybe some of you have heard about that. A fabulous worker at Walmart who had a brain tumor and was a medical marijuana patient. He got fired. ACLU sued on his behalf. He lost. The legal analysis is that you are violating federal law, even if you have a state medical marijuana law. And employers have the right to fire somebody for breaking the federal law. So I think the strategy in the near term, if you're considering legislation, is especially in medical marijuana laws, I think it's probably politically more possible to have in that medical marijuana law that employers operating in that state are not allowed to take negative employment action against a patient without proof of actual impairment. And I think you can probably get that in a medical marijuana law at this point. You probably still have to do that battle in those states like Washington and Colorado that have full legalization. We probably have a little bit harder battle ahead of us. Trish.
Questions for Alison. When you wrote that 502, did you work within the medical community to compromise with it? And if you did or didn't, would you change that now after the reaction?
You know, we, in drafting Initiative 502, we worked with lawyers and patients. I had been talking to patients for a long time, and obviously lots of activists in Washington State. And we built the law around the experience in Washington State, but we also built it around what our public opinion research told us the voters would pass, and also the lessons learned from Proposition 19. And really, in terms of what was upsetting to patients, the number one thing was having the per se standard in there for DUI. Totally understandable. A lot of people were scared about that. A lot of people didn't understand how that worked. They didn't understand that in Washington State, as in most states, there's already a drug driving law, right? That essentially, it is already the case that if an officer thinks that you're impaired and pulls you over and has probable cause for an arrest, you can be taken in for a breathalyzer, but if there's no evidence of alcohol, you can then be taken for a blood draw to see, and it's not specific to marijuana, it's to any other substance, and it doesn't matter if it's a legal substance or an illegal substance. If you're impaired by a prescription drug that you're taking completely legally. It was already the law that all of that could happen. And so what Initiative 502 changed was what would happen if all of those steps had happened and then your blood test actually came back at the request of the prosecutor, right? Because what happens with drug driving cases is that the officer takes you in, you get the blood draw from the medical professional, that goes off, that blood draw goes off to the Washington State Patrol Tox Lab, right? Nobody knows what your results are. The police officer never knows if you're at 5 nanograms, 2 nanograms, or whatever. And by the way, when Gil was talking about the zero tolerance policy, as a practical matter, it's 2 nanograms because the Washington State Patrol Tox Lab will not return results on anything that doesn't test at least 2 nanograms.
They just got new equipment this week, brand new equipment, time of flight, it can go down to 0.5. They're gonna test it, the level of detection is what the law says. Level of detection, 0.5.
Okay, the law doesn't say level of detection, but anyway.
Did it just say 2?
No, the
No,
Tox
it
Lab says
says
2
It's
nanograms.
0.5, level of detection, brand new equipment, delivered this week, down in Soto, Seattle.
Point of clarification, Gil. There's a difference between the standards of what will be allowed in a criminal prosecution in a court of law versus standards for other purposes. So it may come back with a 0.5 nanogram result, but they will not submit that to a prosecutor to charge you with a crime unless it's at least 2 nanograms. It's a reliability issue for them. Anyway, all of that techie aside, your blood test doesn't become relevant until a prosecutor reviews the reports by the police officer that don't have any information about your test results, right? It's just the observations that the officer made in the field. Then the prosecutor can request that test actually come back. And it's if they get that test and they take you to trial, then the test result operates the same as a 0.08 for alcohol, for example, and you could be found guilty solely on the basis of that. That was the main concern that patients had because patients were concerned that they were going to be over this level. The reality is that people in Washington State have been getting prosecuted for marijuana DUIs for years, right? And some of them have been convicted on just carboxy THC. The 502 standard is only active THC, right? So there was a lot of education that had to go into that. The reason that we included it was because one of the things that we learned from Proposition 19 was that one of the number one reasons why people who said they were going to vote yes on Proposition 19 but then changed their mind was because of the efforts of the California Highway Patrol and Mothers Against Drunk Driving to say Prop 19 is going to allow everybody to use marijuana, but they're not giving any tools to law enforcement to deal with drug driving. And so at that point we decided we've got to do something. We're not going to do the zero tolerance standard that a dozen states already have. We're not going to do the 2 nanogram standard that Nevada and Ohio already have. We'll go with 5 nanograms because the science that we have available, which albeit is not nearly as robust as it needs to be, the science we have available tells us that 5 nanograms is probably not going to capture people that are not impaired.
Russ? I got one quick question. If you look at polling in Missouri, in your opinion, would we have better luck passing a medical marijuana initiative or a full-scale legalization? I mean, I'm for the total full-scale legalization,
Yeah.
but I don't want to drop the ball and not pass anything if we can pass something.
Right. And I haven't seen recent numbers. I've heard about numbers from 2 years ago that were probably not strong enough to do a full legalization measure, but the landscape has changed enormously. The Gallup poll, which is a nationwide poll of support for marijuana legalization, jumped 10 points in 1 year. That is literally unheard of. Support for marijuana legalization has gone up about 2 to 3 points a year for the past 3 decades. After Washington and Colorado said, yes, we're going full legalization, after the federal government came back at the end of August and said, and we're gonna let them do it, the poll numbers for the Gallup jumped up to 58% nationwide. I mean, that includes Oklahoma, and I grew up in Oklahoma, and so I know we're dragging the average down. So, you know, the support's there. So I would love to look at Missouri numbers now, because I think Missouri numbers now are gonna be astonishing. I think they're gonna be really different than they were 2 years ago, and I think with the right measure, targeted to the right segment of the voter population, you can get it done. And when I say that, what I'm saying is that if you compare Initiative 502 to Amendment 64, they were different in they appealed to different voters. So with 502, we pulled 20 of 39 counties. We had 39% of people who identified as Republicans vote yes. We really were able, we had a larger percentage of older voters that voted for 502. And Amendment 64 was much more appealing to the younger demographic, especially young white men, very liberal. And so if you're gonna go here in Missouri, if you're gonna go in 2014, an off year, it's not a presidential election year, probably fewer voters turn out, maybe your campaign looks a little bit different than if you went in 2016, where you have a more younger population. So there's a lot of details about like what you can do when, what's politically possible. But I'm really excited to see what Missouri can get done.
One more question here.
It would be kind of
Okay. Let's see, is there anyone else? All right. Well, it looks like it's 11:40. We had originally scheduled to have Dan Rush from the United Food and Commercial Workers speak at this point, but unfortunately he is not able to join us today. He had an emergency procedure that he had to have, and he's okay. It's on his foot. It's not life-threatening or anything, but of course he couldn't travel because of that. So
We got more to say.
we have the start of our pizzas. It looks like we don't have all of the pizzas that we need yet, but we were going to have a lunch break. We're going to give about half an hour and then have the Show Me Cannabis Board of Directors talk about what's happening around the state and what we can expect upcoming for the next legislative session, and also the ballot initiative that we're working towards. I think we'll kind of play with it and be flexible over the next hour and a half, basically, I think is what we have roughly an hour and 20 minutes now to do that. And George is itching to ask a question or make a
I
point.
just want to make a plug for our fundraiser tonight. I'm DJing. My name is Papa Biz. I volunteer my service.
Let's get a
DJ. I don't know
show
if
of hands on who's gonna come
done this
tonight.
before. We've had fundraisers, but we haven't had DJs. So after we take all of your money from the fundraiser to help us with our cause, you can dance the night. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Yes, so we have tickets up here for the fundraiser tonight. It's at Anton's Tap Room beginning at 7 p.m. We're finishing here at 6, and we gotta get everything cleaned up and out of here by 7, so we're gonna start that then. There are appetizers, a heavy load of appetizers that hopefully will feed folks. It's $25 for persons, and it's $20 for students and persons with disabilities. We may need to work on that. We have, unfortunately, did not have the clarity. It's on a second floor and there's not an elevator. So we sincerely apologize to persons with disabilities. We do have several strong and willing persons to help carry folks up those stairs. I know that is not ideal, and I blame myself. I very much apologize for that situation, but we really would love to have everybody there who can possibly be there. The bathroom up there is accessible, so we've got that at least. There'll be a cash bar as well. We'll have an auction and fundraiser, and all of our speakers, which should be there in attendance. It'll be a really great time. We always have an excellent time with these, and of course, George will be DJing, so it'll be great. Can I get a show of hands for folks who are planning on coming tonight? We have, all right, so I'm coming. We're getting up there, and those of
Long
you.
ago, we got a good party.
It's a good party, it's for a good cause. Some of you have bought tickets online, but we have tickets up here for sale. We also have some nice merchandise, so we want, please come and check out what we have. A little bit of social time, is there?
Since we have something a little bit of delay, can you guys ask a question?